Well, here we are. Having finished Harry Potter Book 3, I have actually went out and purchased a shirt in my house colors, Slytherin. Because I am so hyped. I am so excited to be talking about this one. To be talking about Harry Potter and the Prisoner of Azkaban, which was for a very, very long time when I was younger and wasn't quite as advanced at reading, was one of my favorites. Like, it's not so much now, and I do think it's a big part of that is because a lot of this novel, everything that makes it appealing, that makes it really, really special, it's all stuff that's kind of lost upon rereading. For the most part, it's still a very great novel. I love it a lot, but rereading this thing or listening to it on Audible, I was mostly invested in like the harsh details, like when you know the actual plot, the ending, like the actual revelation at the end, it kind of loses a bit of its impact. In fact, it kind of makes you wonder about all the different ways it could have gone. Not that that's bad. Like, in fact, it's quite the opposite. It's like mind-blowing. In fact, just how creative and how unorthodox this entire setup is. This is the book, I think, where Jo really came out on her own and really made a spectacular novel, where she really pushed your expectations and really defied what you could expect from this series, because it wasn't obvious because of the way it's set up, the way it's handled, the way she executes this. You really don't see the ending coming. And as a result, you can't help but just be blown away by it. Like, even now, even as an adult, I still get excited about it. It's just phenomenal just how well she world builds. This is the I disagree strongly with the assertion among some fantasy book authors that like J.K. Rowling doesn't do a whole lot of world building. I disagree. Like, her world building is focused entirely on like the characters and the culture of the wizarding world, right? Like how people behave in their ordinary lives, right? Like, she does a really, really good job explaining how and why characters do certain things, why they do certain actions in like a very significantly short amount of time, because up until this book, we had no idea who Sirius Black was. Up until this book, we had no idea what James's background like. We had like a vague idea. We know he went to Hogwarts. We know he's Harry's father. We know like Snape dislikes him. But this is the novel that sort of puts that into a bit more context, right? This is the novel that really emphasized, like really, that really establishes like what exactly Snape's deal is, right? We learn a bit more about James. We learn a bit more about James Potter, Harry's father. We learn a bit more about his friends, what his time was like at Hogwarts, and Harry has to deal with this. And it's a very, very interesting sort of dilemma, right? Where this criminal, Sirius Black, escapes from the wizarding prison at Azkaban and goes on the run. And the way this is handled is that first, it sort of like escalates, right? Where Harry doesn't necessarily know who Sirius Black is. Like, until he gets on the night bus, he's never heard of him before. Right? He doesn't know he's a wizard. Right. That's how it works. Like, he sees him on TV, then he sees him on the night bus, learns his name, then he learns that he was like Voldemort's servant, like killed 12 people with a single curse, or 13 people with a single curse. He learns like how he served Voldemort, and like begins to learn more and more and more about him. And like there's this very, very well done sort of gloom and doom around this situation, because unlike the last novel that was focused entirely around like Muggle-born students being attacked, this time the novel seems to be pointing to like Harry himself is in trouble, and you sort of like feel that, you sort of like emphasize with that. Like this is the first time that Harry himself is like being threatened because of who he is. Right, up until now, like he was only under threat because like he kept putting himself in like dangerous situations for reasons, right? Because that's just who he is and stuff like that. He's Harry freaking Potter, right? This one is the first that really emphasizes just the sort of culture that surrounds Voldemort, right? Like what his servants sort of. We learn a bit more about his servants, about what happened to them in the lore, about like how they behave, how they're seen by society, how they're treated by like the government and stuff like that. And we learn a bit more about the prison, like how they're imprisoned, Azkaban prison, and the guards that oversee it, the Dementors, are just this incredibly creative sort of really engaging antagonists that aren't exactly they're not really antagonists because they're sort of there to prevent Harry from being attacked by Sirius, but Harry hates them all the same because again he has this phobia of them for a good reason. They're terrifying fucking creatures. It does Joe does a really good job of like just sort of creating these sort of like moral dilemmas, right? Because it's not exactly clear what Black's motivations are at first, like what he wants to do, what he escaped Azkaban to do, what his background is, and like it's very telling. And this is something I have to praise Joe for. It's kind of interesting seeing how even 3 books in, we're seeing the characters grow up. We're seeing Harry start to like stand up for himself against teachers, against the Dursleys, against Snape in particular. We're seeing like Ron and Hermione start to fall in love with each other. We're seeing like all this very real character progression, right? We're seeing Hermione take on new responsibilities. We're seeing Harry like deal with this sort of controversy. It's just with this sort of like Sirius Black thing. It's just unbelievable. It's just it's handled really well, and it's incredibly engaging, right, from start to finish. And a lot of what makes it work is just how many. This is the book, I think, that really starts to expand the overall world of Harry Potter a bit more. Because the first 2 books don't have a ton of very important, relevant characters to like the overall plot. You have like Dumbledore, you have like the basic cast, you have Harry, Ron, and Hermione, you have some of the Gryffindor house. But this is the one where you meet like characters that sort of have real consequences to the plot, right? You have like, this is the one that introduces Cedric, Cho Chang. It has like Cornelius Fudge take on a more prominent role, who speaks to Harry several times. You have like side characters like Buckbeak. You sort of have this this crazy situation, right? It's unbelievable how it's starting to. Joe really did start to find her footing with this one, and just really starting to like establish the world, and really starting to flesh it out more and make it more engaging and interesting. Seeing stuff like seeing how the government handles Buckbeak's execution, how they handle like Sirius Black, it really gives you this appreciation for how like messed up things are in the Harry Potter world, and like how things do need to change. Like even in this like a supposed post-Dark Time era, this Golden Age era. Well, I suppose the real Golden Age doesn't start until after the books end, but in this like era of peace, like this is what passes for normal, right? That just the inconsiderateness of it, like just how they handle these things, right? And the novel does a lot to sort of like emphasize that there are lots of hidden complexities in like the plot that aren't really readily apparent. And I think that's most obvious with the whole Sirius Black thing, and like the revelation, the plot twist plot twist. It's hard to call it a plot twist because like it feels like it's something everyone already knows. But Sirius is built up throughout the entire novel as being this incredibly powerful dark wizard who is faithful to Lord Voldemort and wants to kill Harry and rejoin him. That's how he's hyped up throughout the entire novel. But towards the end, you begin to realize that he's innocent. He didn't actually do it. It was someone else. It was all a gigantic misunderstanding. They were tricked by the traitor, Peter Pettigrew, in just a really clever, unique, novel way. That really takes advantage of the setting in contemporary times and the whole fantasy aspect of it. Like, to think that someone could... Pettigrew is like hyped up as being pathetic. Like, he is referred to as pathetic, he's weak, but he did the unthinkable, like standing up to Sirius Black in order to avenge his friends James and Lily, right? That was the narrative that he cultivated himself rather cleverly. Like, he managed to trick everyone into thinking he had been killed by Sirius by removing his own finger and escaping. It was just unbelievable. It makes so much sense, and it's such a complicated plot too, and like such a short novel, and it's I can't help but just appreciate just how they can how Joe was able to completely change the perspective on these things, right? Like to set up our expectations and then just like blow our minds with this unbelievable plot twist. It was just unbelievable. And it's kind of incredible to see like how Harry sort of like deals with this, like sort of grows and accepts and like realizes that this is just sort of accepts it and sort of like moves on with his life and sort of like sees a new opportunity, a future of a life with Sirius. And unfortunately that's taken from him, but like the entire novel seems to have this underlying theme of overcoming depression. And I think that it does so incredibly well, right? It sort of like emphasizes that Harry is going through a ton of shit, more than he has in his entire life, honestly. Like, even with his terrible life with the Dursleys, he's still going through hard times, but, like, he still has a lot going for him. He still has these great friends. He still has these people that care about him. He still has, like, his entire life ahead of him. And eventually he learns to deal with these overbearing situations. And this is something I appreciate more as an adult. I did not really think as a child that there was anything particularly messed up about Harry Potter, but now that I'm older, it becomes a bit apparent to me that like there is a lot more wrong with him than I would thought. Like back in the day, I was just like, his parents, the Dursleys just don't like him. But now I see them as being like downright child abusers, right? Like just the crazy shit they do, like putting bars on his window, smashing him with like frying pans. It's just making him do chores like near constantly. It's just unbelievable. Like the sort of shit they put him through, and it's makes him way more sympathetic than I think I did. I saw him as a child. Like I still like the character, right? But I appreciate him even more now. Honestly, it's kind of amazing. And the end of this novel, when Sirius suggests that Harry could live with him, and Harry immediately agrees. Like you honestly feel really happy for them. You honestly feel as if they're really growing and things are going to change. But unfortunately, that doesn't happen. Like, shenanigans happens, and they sort of have to deal with it, and it's just, ooh. So close. So it's a really good message, I think, is that, like, even if you overcome your depression and like your crippling anxiety or what have you, you're still going to have problems. There are always going to be things in your life that are wrong, right? That you're not entirely happy with. But Harry sort of deals with that. Like, he lost this incredible opportunity. It would be so easy to just sort of like worry about that for the rest of his life. But no, instead he comes away with it like happier than ever. And I think that's a really good message in general. I think it's very, very impressive. Joe did a fantastic job with this novel. It's probably still, it's my favorite of the first three, I would say, for sure. But it's not quite on par with, I think, the last four. I think the last four, starting with Goblet of Fire, the writing quality does start improving significantly. I already went ahead and listened to like the first chapter of Goblet of Fire, and I was just blown away by just how much better the imagery, the world building, just the technical aspect of it all was. Like, it felt less like a children's book, and like felt more like Joe was felt more suitable for an older person, and that really that was just, it was just a lot of fun to listen to. It was just very, very engaging. There's this air of mystery about it. Goblet of Fire is a fantastic novel, and I cannot wait to discuss about that one, to discuss that one in depth. But Prisoner of Azkaban, it's darker, it's grittier, it sort of has this, it's still very much rooted in the first two books. It's not quite reaching the point where things are incontrovertibly fucked up. That doesn't come until book 4, but like you do begin to realize that is the direction that it's going in. And for that reason, Prisoner of Azkaban is basically like the bridge novel, right? Between like the beginnings of the series and the end, right? And we're getting there. We are getting there. We're almost halfway through this series, and I'm still in love with it. Like, Prisoner of Azkaban is just a phenomenal, phenomenal book, and I hope that it continues to be read and enjoyed by people everywhere, all over the world, because it really is something that deserves to be talked about.